I call to order this special select board meeting for July 15th, 2021. The purpose of the meeting is for a hearing, a public hearing, for discontinuance of the northern portion of Town Highway 11, Butler Lane, also known as Butler Road. I will read the full warning for the purpose of the meeting and also for the purpose of reading into the public record. Pursuant to the requirements of Title 19, Chapter 7 of the Vermont Statutes Annotated, the Town of Underhill will conduct an examination of the premises on Wednesday, July 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Excuse me. A public hearing will take place on Thursday, July 15th, 2021 at 6 p.m. to consider the discontinuance of a portion of Town Highway 11, Butler Lane, also known as Butler Road, which is a Class 4 highway. All interested parties shall meet for the following: an inspection, which took place last night, of the premises at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 14th, 2021 on Town Highway 11, Butler Lane, also known as Butler Road, to be held at the parking area adjacent to the Butler Family Sugar House, which is located on said Town Highway 11, 1/4 mile north of the intersection of Butler Lane or Road and Iris Settlement Road. The portion of the Class 4 town highway to be considered for discontinuance may be described as follows. Starting at or near the northeast boundary corner of the property located at number 23 Butler Lane, also known as Butler Road, said terminus being approximately 1,300 feet northerly of the intersection of Town Highway 4 and Town Highway 11. And then proceeding northerly on Town Highway 11 to the Underhill-Cambridge town line. The portion of highway being considered for discontinuance is currently designated as Class 4, and the northerly portion thereof is labeled as impassable or untraveled per the 2016 Vermont General Highway Map for the Town of Underhill, prepared by the Vermont Agency of Transportation. A public hearing on Thursday, July 15th, 2021 at 6 p.m. will be held at the Underhill Town Office located at 12 Pleasant Valley Road, Underhill, as well as virtually using the GoToMeeting virtual platform. The purpose of the hearing is to receive testimony from all persons abutting, owning, or interested in the matter of discontinuing that portion of Town Highway 11 as described above. If conditions change due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the hearing will solely take place remotely. Please stay apprised by monitoring the Town of Underhill's website and homepage, www.underhillvt.gov, for the up-to-date details regarding the hearing. Persons wishing to comment, provide testimony, or give evidence regarding the proposed discontinuance may do so in person or remotely during the hearing, or by filing comments in writing prior to the hearing. If after examining the premises and hearing from any and all interested persons, the select board judges that the public good, necessity, and convenience of the inhabitants of the Town of Underhill warrants discontinuing the above described portion of Town Highway 11 it will be so ordered. This warning was dated at Underhill, Vermont on the 7th day of June 2021. And I will pass over the moderating of the hearing to our town moderator, Dan Nance, who will gather the testimony for our later deliberation. And please note your testimony, it's a fairly narrow focus. It's not for what we want to reclassify it up or down, class 4, you know, or not. It's only for discontinuance or not. It's nothing else.
Good. Well, welcome everyone.
Hold on. Point of order, Dan. This is a select board meeting, and I'm reading to understand that the rules of procedure require that the select board meeting be run by a member of the select board, the chair or the vice chair.
It is being run by the chair of the select board. However, as town meeting type hearings are conducted, the town moderator is able to participate as a moderator of the meeting.
This is going to make asking questions challenging.
I think, Peter, Dan's main focus is to keep track of who's speaking and to make sure they state their name and address clearly for the record. There's no limitation necessarily on time. So it's more or less so Dan can listen, Dan Steinbauer can listen, and Dan Mance can help orchestrate the testimony. Basically all we're trying to do.
Okay. Before we get to that, I just have a couple of more housekeeping questions. First, I think it would be good if we could direct the road crew to adjust the road sign. Having seen that, it's quite clear that it should read something like Butler Lane, Town Highway 11. I don't know that needs any kind of motion or anything. I just want to make that point. I think this is also a good time to disclose conflicts of interest if there are any. It's a good idea to ask about that, as well as any communication between select board members or parties.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Would you, I guess, Dan, you could ask if there's been any conflicts of interest, or if there are any conflicts of interest, or if there's been any expectation or communication. But we're moving on to the public comment period.
Right.
Before we get started.
Right.
Go ahead.
So is there any conflict of interest or ex parte communication that any member of the select board needs to report at this time?
I will advise. I don't know if you can hear me very well or not, because I'm traveling on Interstate 89 going to Boston tonight. But as I had previously stated before, my family has been in agriculture since the 1800s, and my family has leased farmland to Frank Hutchins and his family for generations. And Frank is no longer farming it or mowing of fields, and I believe the Butler family is now doing that, which I know my family is extremely appreciative of, living on the Irish Settlement Road for, again, since the 1800s. So there is a relationship as far as the Butlers are neighbors of ours, and the Butler family is mowing crops on our family farm. But I believe that that relationship, there's no money being exchanged from the Butler family to my family for mowing any of these crops, and I believe that I can act in the best interest of the town of Underhill. As far as any communication that I've had, I saw John Butler yesterday and greeted him openly and warmly and shook his hand as well as his boys yesterday, because I feel like that's the right thing to do when you see a neighbor. So as far as any other communication, I have not really had any that I can speak of with anyone from the Butler family regarding this matter.
Thank you, Bob.
Peter has something to say.
Yeah, Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it was unfortunate that the select board split up during the site visit yesterday. I had not seen the section of the road between the brook crossings, so I wanted to see that myself. And I hope that in the future we could, next time, maybe we declare the plan a little bit more firmly. And I don't think I was exposed to anything that other select board members have not seen or heard.
I do not identify for myself any conflict of interest or any ex parte communication regarding this matter. So one of the things that we need to do, a public comment, is there a public comment, any public that wants to make a comment prior to the hearing beginning?
This is Pat Sabalas. I would like to make a comment.
Yes?
Okay, just briefly, my husband and I have been neighbors of the Butlers for about 30 years now, and I believe that they're good people and hardworking people, and I don't think there's any dispute about that around here. But frankly, whether the landowners are good people or bad people or hardworking or lazy is really irrelevant to these proceedings.
Hey, Sophie.
And I'm afraid that there are some misconceptions about what is at stake here and what the process is. It should be clear that the town isn't taking anything away from the landowners. The town has a right of way over a bit more than a half a mile over what is now Butler land, a right of way that the town has had for many years. The landowners are asking the town to give up this right of way. And the other issue is, what is the test that the select board should apply? And much on Front Porch Forum, much has been said about the Butler family and their hard work, and there's no question about that. But the question the select board has to answer is not what is the best interest of the landowner. The applicable legal standard as set forth in the notice is whether the public good, necessity, and convenience of the inhabitants of the town warrants discontinuing the road. I can see arguments on both sides of the question, and I can live with whatever the select board decides as long as the decision is based on that correct standard. So I hope that those people who testify tonight focus on explaining to the select board how the public good, necessity, and convenience of the town's inhabitants warrants discontinuance, or how it doesn't warrant discontinuance, and in that way assist the select board in resolving that particular question. So I'm glad I don't have to make the decision. Good luck, and I hope it all works out. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment that anyone wants to make?
We have a chance to make a comment after the presentation.
Yeah, well, this is not testimony, it's just public comment. You know,
Anytime the select board is together, it's traditional that there's a small public comment period. You could present a comment about anything. Doesn't have to be germane to the discontinuance. Ready to get started?
let's move on to the testimony portion. Before we begin that, everyone who is planning on giving testimony needs to swear in. Raise your right hand. Including those on the GoToMeeting. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, answer, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, thank you all for all of those preliminaries and clarifications. For those of you I don't know, I'm Dan Mans. I'm the elected moderator for the Town of Underhill. I think it was explained earlier, this is really a select board hearing. My role in this is simply to help facilitate the input, the testimony that folks will give that becomes the factual basis upon which the select board will deliberate and consider the ultimate decision about discontinuing or not discontinuing the road in question, portion of Town Highway 11. So this is a little bit different than how you may have seen me work in other town meeting scenarios. There's no motions here tonight. Nobody has to make a second. We're not all going to vote at the end of this thing and make a decision. This should really be a quasi-judicial hearing that is solely for the input of the select board to help them in making their decision. So what will happen, we'll have some presentations. Brad Holden, I think, is going to give a little bit of history and background, talk a little bit about the applicable law. I'm not sure what all else he has to present, but he'll give some information. And then my understanding is that Natalie has some information that she can present also on sort of the history and the use of the road and the impact it's had on your family property up there. So we'll get those two pieces of information, and then we'll go into asking folks to come forward and give testimony. It will be most helpful if you can try and focus the testimony on, I support discontinuance of the road based on the following, or I support the town continuing to maintain its right of way for the following kind of reasons. That will help the select board if you sort of premise it that way. We've got a microphone and a seat up here. We'll ask everyone who wishes to speak to come up here. That's going to greatly facilitate folks who are meeting with us virtually hearing what people have to say, and the select board being able to see you as you're providing the testimony. Please, each time you come forward to speak, tell us your name, tell us where you live. You do not have to be a resident of Underhill to provide testimony in this tonight. There are folks who may be from adjacent communities who also have an interest and might like to speak. That is perfectly allowable in this setting. After the first couple of presentations, we'll again try and keep this reasonably moving. I'll give people about 3 minutes to make whatever comment, remark, input they want. I'll let you know you're at the end of 3, give you another minute or so. And so please try and wrap up. Each time someone speaks, I want to end before you scurry back out into the audience. I want to end with an opportunity for the select board to ask any question. They may have clarifications that they would like from whoever the presenter is. So I want to make sure that they get the best opportunity to understand any of the hearing testimony that was given. Okay, so we'll keep it fairly informal. I'll try and keep things running along in a reasonably timely fashion, but we will take as much time as we need to get through this. And if people have follow-up remarks, we can let you come up and speak a second time as well. So with that, let me turn it over to Brad Holden if you're ready to make your opening presentation about this matter.
Anybody on the go meeting, can you hear me okay? Peter?
I think it would be helpful if you carried a microphone with you.
Okay. Probably not in there. A minute here.
So either you have to move your laptop closer to that mic or get closer to this one.
I have to stay
Yeah, if you're there, it should be okay.
You want me to advance anything for you over there?
Yeah. And then I'll just walk over to walk. So as you saw, Dan read the warning. This is the official warning that's posted. Let's get into, maybe we'll let somebody advance. Yeah, possibly. Good word. That's great. Yeah, this is bookmark. Bookmark certificate of service. You can click on that. Just click on that. And then go to the page. So notices were given on June 7th to the following parties, and this is a certificate of service. You can pan down if you like, just hit the right arrow. But not the right arrow on the laptop. Yep. So there's certified mail, all the parties, interested parties that were on, all the parties living or adjacent to Butler Lane, and interested lien holders, as well as the current use program and Department of Forests and Parks and the town of Keene. We can go to the date of the publication. So this is about David of publication, Burlington Free Press, where on on June 30th, the warning was posted in Burlington Free Press. Next one down. This is the Mountain Gazette, dated July 1st, I believe. The warning also posted there. And down to the next. So this is the select board meeting minutes from May 27th, 2021. With the select board, we pan down a page. This was the right arrow. Where the select board moved to consider or take up discontinuance proceedings on their own motion. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we got to this point. So I'm not going to get specifically dates, but the Butlers had submitted a petition in the fall of 2020. The petition was accepted on site visit, and the hearing was set. Upon further examination of the statute, our attorneys found that that the one petition, in our opinion, was not satisfactory to take up discontinuance because the highway intersected the town line. So then the Butler family petitioned in Cambridge to Cambridge residents, got 5% of the voters or landowners in Cambridge to sign a petition. Then they resubmitted both petitions, the Underhill petition and the Cambridge petition. So we then accepted those petitions after having the town clerk in Cambridge verify the names, and we submitted that to the select board of Cambridge. We had a lot of back and forth about procedure. Long story short is that Cambridge felt that they did not need to be part of a joint hearing process, and that Underhill could take up these proceedings on their own. What's the next one I have there? Right here. Yeah, so this is the response, and I think you have that copy of that letter. You have that? Yeah. Oh, you do the whole thing. So basically, this is a letter from Attorney Jim Barlow, who represents the town of Cambridge, basically stating their position about the two petitions.
It's just the last paragraph.
Yeah, so basically, if you go back one page there, so kind of a little bit of a description of why they felt they didn't need to participate, but I think what's important here is that the Cambridge Select Board has asked me to express to you that the Cambridge Select Board does not object to discontinuance of Butler Lane, fully supports the Underhill Select Board's authority to make its own decision regarding the discontinuance of Butler Lane by proceeding under 19 VSA 708 and 771. Underhill will be retaining the community's decision-making authority over its own highways, a point that the Cambridge Select Board believes to be very important. So then, let's go. So that's how we got to this point where we are today. But there's a little more back history. I'm gonna take out the 2011, the Butlers had requested the road to be discontinued. We had a site visit in 2011. The select board took no action. So that's where that stayed. But in 1995, we just can see that whole document. The town of Underhill had a discontinuance hearing to consider discontinuance of, I believe, 3 highways. So if we pan down to the next page with a right arrow, maybe pan down. I should have it highlighted. Maybe back up. Yeah. Now let's pan down some more. Let's keep going. Yeah. I'm going to get great, a little more back. No, this, yeah. So during that discontinuance proceeding, the other highways were discontinued, but when it came to Town Highway 11, they did a site visit. They parked on the one side as we did yesterday. They examined the bridge abutment, they drove around, walked in from the other side, confirmed that it was actually a through road into another town. And then they did not act on the discontinuance because in that time they believed the process had to be done with both towns. So that was the reason there. So no discontinuance in Butler, leaving the Town Highway 11. Just skip down. So in December, the chair of the select board reached out to the Cambridge select board and with this letter explaining what happened. I could not find a response to this letter in the records. Doesn't mean there wasn't one, but if you can, the next bullet, yeah. So this is a follow-up letter, I believe, in January. Yeah, in January 26th, just asking again. They would, are you interested in taking up discontinuance for this highway? And again, I did not find a response in the record. It doesn't mean there wasn't one, but I just couldn't find it. So that's kind of some of the history here regarding discontinuance. Let's pan down that side. Okay, so let's click on here that is. So, as I mentioned, this is a through road. Right down here, you can see this is the Beers Atlas for Cambridge. And there's the section where it says Brewster. That's the section of the highway, and there's the town line. So there's that section, and the road continued on to Cambridge Junction. Then we can just click on to the next. This is a walling map of 1857. This is a stream here. I don't know if you can really see it. Maybe should zoom in on it a little bit or go on a couple more clicks. Yeah. So that's a stream, but you'll see a key name there. Melvin. Melvin. Oh, Melvin, key name. That's the purpose of this map. This is the settlement road. Or a road. And you got to remember this is 1857. They're doing the best they can now. So we'll click down to the next slide. So this is what I believe to be the first layout of Town Highway 1. This is 1849. Survey of the road. You'll note here that it commences on the town line, and the description goes southerly of the Widow Melvin. So when you plot this, you add the distances up here, you get about the same distance as we have in Butler Lane. And you apply the historic declination, and it fits fairly close. So these surveys never fit exactly on the ground. They were following some sort of a route, and when the road got built, probably got built different. So, but generally they follow, So this is a road. I believe it says 3 rods here. That road to be 3 rods wide, open to the public. So that is the first layout of Butler. So then we click on to the next. So then in 1867, there was a petition to build more of a through road. There was a petition to the court, and the court at the time laid out a road from Underhill Center to through Town Highway 11 into Cambridgeville. So if we pan down, if we keep panning down, you'll see it highlighted at the top here, one more page. This is just a long description. So this little section right here describes the same, this is Butler Lane. It starts this time at the south, at the intersection of the two roads, Irish Settlement and the Butler Lane, and it proceeds north to Cambridge Town line. So the courses are a little different, but I think what I point out is it's really just one main bend in this road. You come up from the Irish Settlement Road, it takes a bend to the right, and it's fairly straight. So, and that's consistent. These two surveys are fairly consistent, the 1849 and the 1867, with each other. But again, you know, it's not about, when you discontinue a highway, it's good to refer to the survey that was done, right? So, because that's what we're trying to discontinue, this road that was laid out there. Versus if you're reclassifying the road, for example, you're not so concerned about that, but you're just, I guess the main takeaway here is no matter how the survey lines up or what it is, or if you can make head and hair of it, the road is where the road is. This case is a little tricky because we have a road bed that hasn't been used in a lot of years, and there's been no maintenance by the town for, I've asked you know, several people in the town, and it's obvious just from our site visit yesterday that there's been no maintenance of this section of road. So we'll click down. So this continues on. You'll see the rest of the description continues on to Cambridge Village. Why did I do that there? Oh, okay. So then it gets along to the compensation. There you'll see Melvin, $15 on the Butler side. So Melvin owned lot 24 in the second. Butler's bought, I believe, in the 40s. One side of the road. The Butler's on the east side, been there for a long, long time. But on the west side of the road was the Melvin. So the road came through, $15 for given compensation. Crossed within the Cambridge, Sol and Brewster, got nothing. Probably reasons for all that, but it's really not germane to this. Just a little bit of history, not really germane to this proceeding. So if we pan down to the side, what do I have next? Let's go to the bookmarks here, but that way I see on track. And we'll zoom in around that area. So yeah, when you trace the Butler chain back to Melvin, you'll see that up here, go down to 24 in a second, right there, and see the stream cutting across, just as similar as in the Walling. But anyway, that's the lot we're dealing with. Next bookmark. Okay, this is and I think you want to expand it to fit the page. Yeah. So just zoom in on there. Go over there. Zoom in on this section. Right here. Yeah, one a little closer. All right, so this is a 1942 burial farm. These photographs were classified for a long time because of the war effort, but then they became declassified, and they're excellent imagery, and everybody's farming, and it really shows a lot of good detail. We can see there's Butler Lane. There's that one main turn I was talking about. You can see right where the first crossing is. Almost looks like something laid down. It looks white. Really hard. I'm not gonna guess. That's the first cross. Right there. You can pan down, George. be on this. All right, so that, you see a lot of lines and stuff. It's kind of tricky, but right there. Okay, see that little bit of fence line right there, and then it extends just to the north side of that meadow that Butler's have currently. Right about where the town line is. So, not a lot of use. Let's skip to the next, the 62. So this is a 62, 1962 ended. Just have to find the please, if you would. This is a 62 ended. Oh, that's very right. Yeah, I'm just gonna figure out this is the last one. Okay, perfect. All right, so you can see again, there's that, you know, the big main bed that I'm talking about. So just as we saw in the field from the first bridge abutment back to the corner, kind of takes a little, just a little bit of a hook to the west, but fairly straight. And there's the bed. So this layout, or the layout, fits the survey fairly well. So we can go down to the next bullet. Okay, this is current date. This is the parcel map. And if we zoom into the Butler Lane area again, okay, let's go right to where my red is. Right, yeah, a little more. Right. Yeah, right in there. So what I want to point out here is this is just a parcel. Okay, so this road is not correct on this map. So this was, you know, Ed Moore, bless his soul, taking his best stab at trying to find where the road was. You know, it wasn't easy to find, but we all know it's right here. Butler Sugar House, a lot of jigs and jogs there, but you'll see in the red circle, there's the first southern abutment. And the magenta line there is the stream. And if we pan it down a little bit, you'll see the second circle. I can't quite see it myself. Yeah, the second circle. That's the northern abutment, and then it follows the stream right to the town boundary. So again, fairly close right here, but kind of off the mark here. The parcel map is right here. So, but that's neither here nor there. It's not an official document. It's just. And then if we. Oh, yeah. Oh, very nice. So let's click on to the next. So this is an NR map showing the hydrologically connected road segment. So because of the settlement brook, this is a connected road to the hydrology. So, and I don't have this specific date, you'll have to bear with me, but I believe in a roughly 10 to 15 years from now, all of these segments that are mapped connected, we'll have to ensure that there's no erosion or sediment going into the brook. So this situation is a little different because there's no road bed. We did observe some erosion on our site walk yesterday. The hardest part about trying to fix that is you can't get to it. So I just wanted to bring that up, that the road is hydrologically connected, and even though it's not necessarily a high priority on a road segment, nonetheless, it is a road segment that's connected and will have to be addressed by the end of the program. Click on. So this is the 911 map. The reason for this map is if you zoom in on the Cambridge side a little bit, come down, you'll see there's the big trail network over here on the Cambridge side. None of this is connected through the Underhill side. It's independent in the Cambridge side. Next slide, or next bullet. This is a map of the flood hazard area. So if we zoom in a little bit, you'll see the Settlement Brook is in a Zone A flood hazard area. And again, we've got the parcel data again, so the road up here where it takes this hook, right here, that's not correct, as we know. But this is a Zone A flood hazard area. So I would safely say that all of the road bed is in a special flood hazard area. Next. Okay, this is Underhill, the current Underhill Agency of Transportation mileage map. 2016, maybe, whatever was in the warning. So there's that one section. It's all class 4. One section here. This is demarcated as untraveled. So next bookmark. Okay, this is I believe 56. Okay. So there wasn't a lot of reporting done in this time era with road segments and classifications, but this is the, we zoom in on that area, you'll see this is kind of the first time that it's designated as kind of an untraveled sort of unmaintained road versus the designation of higher settlement. We go to the next bookmark. So this is the very first, 1931. So highway maps were first brought into agency of transportation, found the need to keep track of town highways, and the state aid program was founded. So there's Butler Lane or Town Highway 11. You'll see there's no designations. It's just simply a mileage. So there it is. We go down to the next bookmark. Now on the Cambridge side, down in this area, same thing again. There it is. This is a 31 map. There's the section going out down the road. And the next bookmark. Now again, we're in that 56 era. Thought I had that cropped, but I guess I didn't. So right there, again, similar, same designation as the Underhill side. Next one is the current map of Cambridge. I thank George here for doing a good job. There again, so this section is the section is 0.6 of a mile is actually class 3. Then this area here is class 4, last section. So the next, okay, so that just kind of goes through what we know about what's on the ground. I'm just grabbing a folder here. So again, as part of the warning process, we had to notify Forest Parks and Recreation. I sent a notice of this to Commissioner Mike Snyder, and I wanted to read the response for the record. Dear board members, on June 16th, 2021, the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation received a petition to reclassify a portion of Butler Lane, Town Highway 11 in the Town of Underhill. Well, that's not really correct because the petition was to discontinue. But anyway, per 19 VSA 775, municipalities must notify the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation when a petition to discontinue a highway is filed. We got it right there. It must be just using an old form letter. It is the policy of Forest Parks and Recreation to encourage municipalities to keep highways as public rights of way for emergency, recreational, forestry, agriculture, and other purposes. These roads provide numerous benefits, including access to year-round and part-time residents and camps, access to agricultural fields, forests, and sugaring operations, access to state-owned parcels for recreational opportunities, for hunting and fishing, forest management, and other forest products, recreational access for activities like hiking, mountain biking, cross-country skiing, horseback riding, ATV, and four-wheeler use. Forest Parks and Recreation Land Administration staff and district staff in our Essex office have reviewed the petition and have no comments concerning the proposed reclassification. Again, it's not a reclassification, it's a discontinuance, but Forest Parks and Recreation staff will not be participating in the site visit scheduled for July 14th or the public hearing scheduled for July 15th. We respectfully ask that this letter be recorded as part of the official proceedings on this matter. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Sincerely, Rebecca Washington. So on to the next bookmark. I had sent a, this one I don't have. So I had sent a, in the same section of the statute where it says to notify Forest Parks and Recreation, we also have to notify our planning commission. So I had sent the notice to the planning commission, and these are the minutes from the, yeah, and just hand down the July 1st. And I wish I had it to read here, but I might just step over. Staff member Romanoff noted that Chair Keon was notified by email of Town Administrator Brad Holden on June 10th, 2021, of the July 14th site visit and the July 15th hearing regarding the discontinuance of a portion of Butler Road, which he promptly forwarded to the commission staff member. Romanoff further sought comments and input for the forthcoming hearing. The commission was aware of the upcoming hearing and no concerns were raised. So that's from the planning commission. Next, Dave Demarest was present at our site visit yesterday, and he presented with this testimony for me to read. So I want to enter this into the record. Testimony of David Demarest. My name is David Demarest. I have been a resident of the town of Underhill since 2002. I am making this affidavit based upon my personal knowledge, information, and belief. So far as this affidavit is based upon information and belief, I believe such information to be true. I passionately believe the town of Underhill should either properly maintain Class 4 town highway infrastructure for the benefit of all residents and abutting property owners, or discontinue segments of Class 4 town highways out of respect for the reversionary property rights of abutting landowners. I am personally familiar with Town Highway 11, which is now known as Butler Road, Butler Lane. I've never been made aware of any compelling justification for the town of Underhill to retain a public right-of-way on the segment of Town Highway 11, which the town of Underhill has not provided any maintenance for decades. I've personally seen sizable trees growing in what I believe to be the previously traveled portion of the segment of Town Highway 11 in question. I fully support the discontinuance of the segment of Town Highway 11, which is being discussed in the hearing on Thursday, July 15, 2021. I have knowledge and belief that significant public expense and over 12 years of litigation involving Town Highway 26 could have been entirely avoided if the town of Underhill had discontinued a segment of Town Highway 26 in accordance with the wishes of the private landowners of NR 144 in 2001. I have knowledge and belief that the significant public expense and over 12 years of litigation involving Town Highway 26 could have been entirely avoided if the town of Underhill had been willing to keep prior promises explicitly and explicitly made prior to my choice to build my domicile at NR 144, which was later renamed FU 111. I have knowledge and belief certain town of Underhill officials, which have caused significant legal problems and expenses for the town of Underhill taxpayers and residents of Town Highway 26, have conflicts of interest, which should preclude their involvement in all decisions involving Town Highway 11. I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Executed on 7/14/2021, David Demarest, PO Box 144, Underhill, Vermont. So that is from David. The next bookmark I have, so this is the Corbins were at the, Bill Corbin, was present at the site visit last night. He brought up to everyone's attention that he believes that Butler Lane is narrower than 3 rods in width. And he referred to a survey that he kind of generally talked about. So I got an email from his wife, and I pulled the survey out of land records, and here it is. And if we zoom down on this area here, it's basically a survey of Corbin's land. But if we just keep going all the way to the bottom and over a little bit, you'll see that little 33 on the width. And then if we pan over to keep panning this way and up a little bit, you'll see a note here. Down Highway 11, Class 4 road. And it's checked on site, appears to be a 2-road. So I know Gordy Harlow is a good friend of mine. So I just prepared this survey. I happen to have his file for this project. He gave me his files while he was still alive. I checked his file. I did not see any evidence of this, but he's just stating that site appears to be 2-rod width. So they wanted that read into the record, so there it is. So we'll go to the next bullet. So is that from Mike Weisel? So I have a letter that was emailed today, Thursday, July 15th at roughly 1 o'clock. Said, Brad, would you please enter this into the record as regard to Butler Road conversation? And Mike says, there was a time when I was very opposed to throwing up Butler Road. However, that time has passed. At this point, I do not care which way it goes, since the old right-of-way is nearly unrecognizable, and in any case, unusable. Further, I wish to make it clear that I, as an individual, have no interest in establishing a trail through the right-of-way. I, as a board member of the Brewster River Mountain Bike Club, want to say that the club has absolutely no interest in a trail there either. Brewster River Mountain Bike Club has conveyed this message to the Butlers already, but I wanted to reiterate the point at this time and in this proceeding. Mike Weisel, 626 Irish Settlement. Next bookmark. So we have a letter by Mike's wife, Pat. did it a little more officially. He had Siri notarize it, or basically that was, and yeah, she basically just certified that this is her statement. And Pat presented this to Sherry. I am a longtime resident of Underhill, not 100 years, at least not yet, closer to half that. Settlement Brook runs through our property just upstream of the Butlers. As such, I have used the old road to hike, bike, and ski in the past before it became unrecognizable. At the risk of upsetting my neighbors and friends, I have to say that I'm not in favor of the town giving up any existing right-of-way, no matter what its conditions. This is especially true of an ancient road that connects 2 towns and 2 counties. At the site visit last evening, it was clear that the existence of the right-of-way has not affected the sugaring operation there, quite the contrary. As far as I know, there's no interest in changing the classification of this Class 4 road, and there are no plans to create any trail. Given this lack of any change in the current situation, it would seem that most, if not all, of the needs to discontinue the road are not valid. It would not stop those people who choose to trespass or litter or damage private property. The existence of a right-of-way has no bearing on any of that. I'm not trying to burn any bridges, they are already gone, but I felt I had to say my piece on this subject. Thank you, Pat Wise. And let's see, what else we have. We at the end? Okay, so that was the statements that were read. Now I'd just like to take a minute and go through some photographs that I took in April when the leaves were off. So we'll get a better look at it. So just take we'll just progress. Right. But the sun's not shining there, the picture's a little better. So here we are where we started. Well, not quite where we started, but this is that area that I was calling the south abutment. On just a second. So Peter had asked about some of the dimensions, and roughly you can see the stone wall carries on, and John Butler had a good point. He said, you know, that was so the water stayed in the brook and didn't circle back around and take the road out. Makes perfect sense. But the real meat of the abutment right here is roughly 20 feet in width, and the span on the south abutment is around 25 feet. So it's a pretty big span across the brook. Again, on the next photo, there's another shot of the span. This is the roadbed right here. Next slide. This is a shot looking back from the north side of the abutment, right straight back. So you'll see there's lines right up the road, and basically that's where we wanted to start the discontinuance, where we all at the common boundary of Bourgeois and Butler. This is where the Butlers have been traveling, which is outside of the right of way. This is the old road bed. Assumed to be the old road bed because of the monumentation, or I consider the stone bridge abutment is probably about as good a monumentation of the road bed as there is. So next slide. I wonder if we can maximize that. So this is again standing on that, or just north of the south abutment. And this is kind of where I think where we walked yesterday. You know, the road wasn't over here. The abutment lines up more kind of where these trees are. Next slide. I think it kind of hugged this bottom of this bank, so it's starting to come back into this roadbed. You can see there's this isn't the settlement brook, actually. This is an area where it oxbowed out. So the settlement brook's more over here. So this area was probably in the day was a little wider. Next slide. Again, there's looking down roadway right about here. Next slide. Starting to get a little wet. Some areas of wetland for sure. There's no map class 2 wetland here on this section. Maybe a short little spot on the very north end on the town line. But just my experience with wetland, that this would be, in my opinion, considered class 2 wetland. When we go further to the north, one more slide, we progress. This is approaching the north abutment, which is right in there. Again, this is generally the roadbed. Next slide. Just another shot, kind of the brook, again, approaching the north abutment. Next slide. So, sorry, another shot looking back, getting closer to the north abutment, looking back. Next slide, please. So there's the north abutment, and I'm standing on the south side, and there's the roadbed right in the trees. And again, we're kind of speculating that a pretty significant flood event happened here and really changed the topography in this area. Next slide. This is over on the north side of the abutment, and I think, let me just see. Yeah, it looks like you can see some of the water wrapped around, took out the bridge, kind of wrapped around here, but this is roughly the roadbed. Next slide, please. It's another shot of the abutment, that's side view. So the span on that, about the same width, 20 feet in width each side. This span's a little shorter, probably more like 18 feet roughly span. Next slide, please. It's another shot of the abutment. Next slide. Again, I guess I was fascinated with this abutment, so I took another picture. This is heading back to the south. So again, there's the roadbed over there, the Butler division. There's the Town Highway. Next slide, please. Just a shot, right, looking into the heading north on the roadbed on Town Highway 11. Next slide. Right in here again. Right in there is roughly the roadbed. Next slide. Same thing, I'm just progressing further to the north here. We're going right through here, traveling north. Next slide. Comes right through here, that's what I think. There's a path over here, but this is more in line with the bridge abutment and the survey and kind of what I could see on the old imagery. Definitely class 2 wetland in this area, for sure. Kind of sensitive wet area. Probably good soils up on the bank. And that meadow up there, pretty good soils. Tristan could probably attest. And typically when you get to the bottom here, when you're reaching out into the brook, this is where the porous soils are. We'll move on to the north. Again, right through there, right through these alders. Definitely wet. There's the roadway, in my opinion. Next slide. Right in here, we start to come back on to what has been traveled, not recently. Start to see some erosion right here. and it's heading, it's kind of weep out into the brook. But again, you know, this erosion is over a foot in depth, which, you know, we're supposed to fix. It's not a high priority situation here because there's a lot of vegetation. There's not a lot of this, there's not a whole lot of sediment going in the brook. But however, this would be a section, if we were to fix it, we would have to come in from the Cambridge end. So next slide, please. Just another shot, kind of showing the erosion. And there's the road bed. Next slide. Looking back, a little more erosion, a little more wet. Next slide. Starting to get really close to the Cambridge line here. There's the existing road bed and probably what was the original road bed. Next slide. There's the town, there's a granite marker on the town line. So the town line kind of skewing like this. I believe that's the end of the picture. So for those who didn't get a chance to walk, we'll say visit one more of the monument. And that's pretty much what it looks like. It was a good shot of some erosion there. So, but this would be in Cambridge. And I believe that's all I have for the testimony. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask any questions.
Yeah, let's stop for just a moment and let me turn it back to the select board and say, do select board members have any questions of Mr. Holden before we move on?
I do not. Very clear. I don't know about the others.
Just a moment to get on and the.
I think Brad did a great job explaining and laying it all out for us so far.
Super, thanks. Peter, any questions? Can't see.
I can't tell.
Okay. Peter, no questions?
Can you hear me now?
Now we got you. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, it's just this last picture that I wanted to ask about. Those yellow posted signs. Are they in Cambridge?
He's inspecting closely.
Yes, I would say they are.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. So you talked about the trail network in one of the maps.
Yes.
And
Hang on a minute.
Good, Frank, back to that for reference. Correct. This is an E911 map.
Right, go ahead. I got it back up on the screen.
so it looked to me like it's hard for me to see this this E911 viewer in the presentation. But I am familiar with the Strava heat map, and it does look to me like there's a lot of outdoor activity in this area.
Yeah, that's true. So these bike trails are maintained by the Brewster River Mountain Bike Club, and they're on the Howard's property.
So, so it looks to me like they go right up to where those yellow signs are and then turn away.
Yes, I think, well, they're staying on their own. They're staying on the Cambridge side of the line.
Right. So it appeared to me that the Town Highway 11 right-of-way was posted against trespassing.
That's what it appears.
Yeah. Okay. We may have to talk more about that later.
You can address it later if you want, but I think we'll just see if there's any other questions.
Peter, any other questions?
Yes, I do have another about the SPR letter.
What's that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The letter from Forest Parks and Recreation,
Yes.
where they think that this is a reclassification hearing. Has there been any effort to correct their misapprehension?
No, because they did use the word discontinuance in some of it. And then, you know, it was very clear in the warning I sent that it was a discontinuance hearing. So they go through these all the time. I'm sure they do lots and lots of these letters, and maybe this was just a form letter that was, yeah, I didn't think anything of it, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was my place. I didn't think it was my place to correct the Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation.
Do you think that if they thought it was a discontinuance hearing, they might change their opinion about things?
I've worked with Forest, Parks and Recreation. I'm on multiple fronts. They have a separate lands division. I know Rebecca Washburn. They've been involved in hundreds of discontinuance hearings. They knew exactly what it was. I'm opining that it was probably a form letter that just wasn't tuned up properly. They read I did follow up with them because I was a little concerned after talking with a friend of mine who was the past commissioner of Forest Parks. He said, you might want to check because the mail gets rerouted a lot of times down to Middlebury or wherever. You probably want to make sure they got it. So I reached out to them about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, maybe now. And they did respond that they had gotten the notice. They were reviewing it and we would get something. So they're very, as I say, they have a land division with several licensed land surveyors. They're very accustomed, and it's not untypical for them to come to a hearing. My friend that was the past commissioner had been to many, many discontinuance or reclassification hearings. So mostly the state's interests, from what I've heard, are in regards to adjacent lands owned by the state. So seeing none here, They just provided their boilerplate guidance and said they had no comment.
Is there anything
Okay.
else?
Thank you.
We could certainly, I don't think there's anything wrong with following up with them to just clarify. I kind of feel a little awkward doing that because, as I say, they have a very professional lands division. The people as qualified as any of us or more. So, but I would feel a little awkward just by saying, hey, by the way, you realize this was a discontinuance hearing, but that's not out of the question, I guess.
Okay, can I?
It would make me more comfortable if you did that.
We can do that.
Indeed, we can.
Okay, for any of the other folks here, were there any other questions for Brad Rickey? I saw you had a hand up early on.
I guess we'll follow up.
Come on up here.
Yeah, come on up if you would, so that we can get it on the mic.
Right here.
State your name and where you live.
Rick Hay, Kelly Road.
Wow, we are just. Let's turn this. There you go.
Okay.
You can put your left foot behind your neck.
You showed, Brad, you showed some documents earlier back and forth from 1995 to 1996. I was just trying to understand that versus what I'm reading in this document here. It would appear that that there was a request to discontinue the road back in 1995, and there was a site visit, and there were letters back and forth, but you indicated there was no response from Cambridge ultimately. So I'm wondering if what says here, this document says the select board in 1996, the select board of Underhill and Cambridge did a joint unofficial site visit and agreed the road should be discontinued. Is that a true statement or not?
I have a record of that meeting, but perhaps there is a record of that.
That comes from John Butler's number. He walked it with members of the Cambridge Select Board and members of the Underhill Select Board. It was unofficial.
So anyway, I'm just stating.
Point of order.
Yes.
Excuse me. When other people are talking and they're away from the microphone, you can't hear a word they're saying. So if they want to be heard by the entire select board, they're going to need to pause and be talking into a microphone, or we're not going to be able to hear what they're saying.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Does this one work? I thought this one worked. It's right here. They're both on. And you're gonna just flip around, but just in case the audience can't see. So thank you.
Okay, so to reiterate, what Natalie said was that it's a memory of an agreement versus the documentation which does not show an agreement.
I can't verify there's no documentation, but I do know that John Butler and his wife Carol walked this in 96 with members of the Cambridge Select Board and members of the Underhill Select Board. And they agreed it should be discontinued. They just never got the process officially figured out.
Okay, yeah, I was just questioning the fact that it says here clearly that it was agreed to discontinue. That's all.
I don't think it's necessarily germane
So that's it.
to this proceeding per se, but we could certainly dig up the minutes. If either select board were together, there would have to be minutes of the meeting. So I could look that up and we could include that in our, or I could present that to the board for their deliberation.
I might have to give it to
Okay.
meeting minutes.
Any other questions for Mr. Holt before we move on to a presentation from Nat? Yes, sir. Come on up, have a seat, face the microphone, speak and face the camera, speak into the microphone, and start with your name and where you live.
My name is Benjamin Butler. I live at 71 Maple Ridge Road. And my question for Brady,
you had mentioned that the erosion part of that would have to be repaired within a 10 to 15 year time limit. Is that, and that includes all class 4 roads, not just this one?
That's correct. Well, not all class. Okay. No, that's not true. Any hydrologically connected roads.
So that would,
They have to be a specific segment. Like all the work that was just done on Westman Road, those were high priority segments. And I know, appreciate everybody's patience on that road, but those were high priority segments that needed to be done. So the high priority segments have a shorter timeline than all the segments. So I'm sorry that I don't know the deadline, but maybe George does. But I believe it's roughly maybe 15 years from now to get them all done. Many, many of them. But the high priority ones need to be done soon. We have a few years to do the high priority.
so it would have to be an investment from the town at some point.
Possibly at some point. However, on the segment map, it was actually mapped non-applicable because the road isn't traveled. So, but I actually took Chris Dublin, who runs the program for regional planning, and I took them out there because I wanted to know, okay, we have lots of roads that are class 4 that are untraveled. Are those going to be, do we need to consider those? And it's a little bit of a gray area because there's no road bed, right? So if we had road bed, we'd have no ditches or erosion. There's erosion, but there's also lots of vegetation. So
I just didn't know if there was going to be a future investment from, if the town had to.
no,
There's no investment.
mine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else for Mr. Holden before we move on? Okay, Alan, let me turn it over to you. Thank you very much. Come on up. And jump over that wire and have a seat right here.
Geez. First, Brad, thank you for doing a very thorough job. I can skip a lot of the stuff that I prepared.
Start with your name.
Okay, Natalie Coughlin. I live at on Mullen Road in Underhill. Yes, okay. So I did want to say thank you to everybody for coming. Stretch, it's been kind of a long night already. So in what to skip, what not to skip. I don't want to like rehash everything you said. But there have been select boards that have met over this before, in 96 and 2010. And then in 2020, the Cambridge Select Board actually began meeting over their end of the road. They had their landowner request to have their side of the road discontinued. And I will be reading that letter later. And they were going to begin their procedure, but then Underhill's lawyer contacted them and expressed an interest in a trail on that road. And it states that in the letter. And that's what really got the Butlers' attention, because as it is right now as a class 4, it's not really going to change anything for us. Obviously, as a class 4, it's not possible. Underhill can't afford to maintain the current class 4s. It's never going to be passable as a class 4. Our concern is that if it remains a class 4, it's open to being reclassified at any point in the future into a trail. And at that point, it becomes a huge inconvenience to the Butler family. So I'm going to skip over some of this history that I had prepared because Brad did such a great job. We touched on the fact that it's a flood zone, hasn't been used in nearly 100 years. You can't tell where it is. And I did want to talk about Peter's comment that the posted signs. The people who have been following this know that there's been quite a lot of controversial meetings over this, especially with the trails in the area. And the entire Butler property has been posted around the whole property at different points because we experienced a lot of trespassing from people who were using the bike trails and not sticking to the bike trails on the map that they should have. So we did post the entire property without knowing where TH11 or Butler Road is. It could have inadvertently posted some of that, but it wasn't just the road, it's the entire property due to a lot of conflict over the last decade. So I wanted to discuss the good necessity and convenience of inhabitants of Underhill and why I think this is a good idea, and we think this is a good idea to discontinue. I think that there are different levels. I believe there are different levels of people's good necessity and convenience and how much that will affect them. So if you look at the Butlers, their concerns should be, I think, weighted heavily, and the neighbors should also be weighted heavily. And then the will of the residents of Underhill should also be weighted heavily after that about what should happen with this land. So the landowners, the Butlers, have owned and kept this farm going for 174 years in Underhill, and they've been asking to have it discontinued since 1995. It's a working dairy and maple farm and currently taps the old growth maple trees in the area. You could see a lot of the taps in the photos that Brad presented, and you would notice that the main highway of main lines is possibly, without knowing where the road is exactly, interfering with that right of way. So if any future down the line trail was to be created, that would cost a significant amount of money to the farm to relocate that tubing and possibly lose trees to clear cutting or however that would happen. The Butler farm has survived and remains one of the last 2 working dairy farms in Underhill. Continued threat of opening this road in the future as a trail, as a class 4 again, it's not a threat, but the only reason to leave it open tonight or when the select board decides would be for a future trail. It would cause additional unnecessary stress to this family's lives and business. And discontinuing this road would not prevent friends and neighbors who have already asked permission and used the Butler property for recreation from continuing to do so. So that's the Butler family, their impact. I want to read a couple of letters from neighbors. I have one from Kathy Corbin. She lives on Butler Lane. My name is Kathy Corbin, and my family and I have lived on Butler Road for 32 years. I am writing to let the select board know that we are 100% in favor of the Butler family's request to discontinue their portion of Butler Road. Their family has been requesting this for years without result. The Butlers have been farming the area for generations, and the present generation is working hard to bring the farm forward and maintain a legacy that is falling by the wayside. If you vote against discontinuance, we all know what the next step the board will take is. It would be a travesty of decision-making if you decide to pursue alternate uses for this road. Please do the right thing and support this family's endeavors. The Butlers obtained a significant number of signatures from Underhill residents on the petition they presented. The residents and Butler Road landowners have spoken. How about you listen? I am sure after the site visit, you realize that there is no road there and there won't be again without excessive expenditure at the town's expense. I also have a letter that was sent to the Cambridge Select Board on April 20th, 2020 from the other landowner that owns both sides of County Farm Road where it's not used. This is when they requested their end be discontinued. And this is what started the procedures in Cambridge that got stopped when they received a letter from Underhill's lawyer. In 1971, when we purchased the Brewster Farm from my grandparents, County Farm Road was passable from Lower Pleasant Valley Road entering near the Marsh residence to Irish Settlement Road in Underhill. For many years, County Farm Road was used for recreation by horseback riders, hikers, and bikers. Over the years, the road from the plow turnaround area on our property through ours and the Butler's property in Underhill has deteriorated and is no longer usable for even this type of recreation. In recent years, we have been experiencing some issues with people accessing our property from the County Farm Road on the Cambridge end. We do not post our land, and although we still wish to keep it open for recreational purposes, we would like more control on the access. From the turnaround to the Underhill town line, we, the landowners on both sides of the road, we own the land on both sides of the road. As the road is in rough shape and no longer a through passage, we are requesting the road property in Cambridge be released to us as the surrounding landowners. As mentioned, the town plow trucks have a turnaround area on our land that they use when plowing the passable part of County Farm Road in Cambridge. If the town agrees to transfer the land and there needs to be some official agreement for the turnaround, we are open to allowing that to continue. Dwayne and Martha Howard. So those are the some property owners on each side and their interest. And then I wanted to discuss Underhill residents in general. So we did collect signatures. We collected over 16% of Underhill residents' signatures who supported discontinuing this portion of Butler Road. And I think that shows that they, the convenience of the inhabitants would support a discontinuation of this road. We also, as a mathematician, we had a sampling of Underhill residents on November 4th, 2020. We approached almost every single person who came to vote in the election. And we had over 200 voters were approached, and only 4 of those voters declined to sign the petition to discontinue the road. From this mathematically significant sample size, we can extrapolate that the approximate support for this discontinuation is 98% of Underhill residents. I also have a letter sent, and Brad did read this, but I do want to reiterate this. This was sent from the Town of Cambridge lawyer to the Town of Underhill regarding Underhill conducting this hearing on its own. And the most important thing that I want to highlight, from Brad already read it, but I do want to say that Cambridge says, the Cambridge Select Board has asked me to express to you that the Cambridge Select Board does not object to the discontinuance of Butler Lane and fully supports the Underhill Select Board's authority to make its own decision regarding the discontinuance of Butler Lane. Thank you. So I think that I think I've covered the good necessity and convenience of the landowners, the neighbors, and also the general residents of Underhill have expressed what they would like to happen. I don't know if there's any.
Okay, good. Stay here for just a moment. Let me come back to the select board. Any questions you might have for Natalie? Thank you very much. We're not hearing Peter or Bob. Peter, go ahead. We gotta get your sound going.
Can you hear me? Natalie, you've put a lot of effort into communicating with social media and with newspapers, kind of framing the question. And I'm wondering most about this question. You were very insistent that this just be a question of discontinuance or status quo. Can you explain why that is, and which, since classification can run quite a large range, why you would line up all of those options against discontinuance?
Yeah, could you give us that? Yeah, I'm not.
I get your question.
Sure.
Dan?
Sure, I can say it again. Okay.
I understand.
Succinctly,
I think Brad may have it. Could you restate, please, and Peter will see if this is what it was.
I know what he's asking.
Okay.
Are you asking the question of Dan, Peter?
well, actually, I'm asking it of Natalie because this all started with Natalie's petition, and she's worked very hard to frame the question. And the question is discontinuance or anything else. And I'm wondering why choose that over, a more fine-grained analysis of the alternatives.
So why don't we want anything other than discontinuance? Is that the question? Yeah, so on our farm, we've enjoyed privacy since the bridges washed out in 1933. John has enjoyed privacy, and I did post some things about, even though we don't have a current accessible class 4 road through our property because the bridges are missing, we have still experienced a significant amount of vandalism and theft and trespassing. Even though this trail isn't published, it's not open to the public. You can't use it without going on Butler property and asking permission. And I know that other trails in this area that are opened up and are printed and invite the public in experience a lot of vandalism and littering and damage. And we are running a business. And this is something that we want to keep running as a farm and not be forced to sell the cows or be forced out of agriculture because we are so fed up with the constant stress. So we really want to maintain our privacy on our farm, and that's why discontinuance is so important to us. And having a trail which would disrupt 100 years of privacy would be something we are not interested in.
Thank you.
So the Butler farm's been around a long time, and Underhill was established in 1763, I think, with the Wentworth grant. So I guess my question is, at one point there was a request to have this road in place for agricultural purposes, I believe. And I'd really like to understand more about that deep history of the original purpose of the road. And, you know, since it did wash out, what happened to the uses that were there prior to the washout of the bridges?
So it's my understanding that the road was originally put in as the flattest route to move timber. Is that correct, Brian?
Commerce, just in
Commerce in general. At a time when everybody knew everybody in town and there were very few strangers. That I believe it was the original intent.
And Brad, that would have been before the Pleasant Valley Road was constructed. Is that correct?
Right. So, you know, if you look right around that time in the 30s, if it was the 30s, 40s, that the bridges washed out, that was a time where the railroads were going out. The Burlington Moyle Railroad went out in 38. You know, the use of trucks and paved roads kind of took over from the old way of life, you know, the old horse-drawn loads, you know, trying to carry large, heavy loads on the flattest route possible. Once trucks came into use, hills weren't a big deal anymore. You know, you could go anywhere. We didn't need the railroad anymore.
And so Pleasant Valley Road became the option.
Pleasant Valley's always been, right. So yeah, there's a connector. The connector became the option. Yeah, get over to and you know, the valley has got a hill, pretty steep hill on the Cambridge side. But again, I say that you know, that route probably it was no longer needed.
Peter, is that a historical understanding you're looking for?
Well, you know, Brad had earlier mentioned allowance land, and I'm trying to find the connection between the historical use and the allowance land and, this idea that it's a right of way on top of Butler land. It seems like the Paul Gillies road law write-up has, makes it sound a little bit more complicated than just there was a right of way put on top of land. Can you talk more about allowance land and how that's sort of part of the original grant?
Yeah, again, this was in the second division of land. So yeah, there were allowances for highways. So you didn't just get 100 acres, you got 104 acres. 4 acres was allowed for highways. So that's been debated back and forth. And you'll see in some early condemnation proceedings that takings through parcels that were allowance lands, parties got no compensation. But in this case, I showed you the condemnation hearing, and the Melvin, who was the owner at the time, received compensation. So, allowance lands haven't really been talked about for a long, long time. The only place they still exist today are in the condemnation law for the taking of highways. So there's still a provision in there for allowance lands. Not a lot of people understand it. The provision is still there, but the original chartered lot has to be intact. So if it was subdivided up at all, then compensation would have to be given. I think it was like 1805. These are all chartered. Allowances were under the New Hampshire charters, right? So that was very customary of New Hampshire charters to have allowance lands for highways. But once Vermont became a state, and highway law became more established, Title 19, I believe it was 1805, stated that any highway that was laid out, people must be compensated for the layout. So slowly they've been picking away at this allowance land, and I just feel it's really no longer applicable.
I want to be respectful to the select board here. I know there are others here who I think would like to provide testimony tonight. The select board is going to have an opportunity for deliberation after tonight's hearing, and so
yeah, I got a question for Natalie. I want to ask her if she agrees with what Brad just described, that there was fair compensation for the right of way.
What was the question?
There was. So what's your question, Peter?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Was there fair compensation from the town to Melvin for the right of way?
I believe the record shows there was $15 given for the right of way.
Do you find that to be a fair compensation?
I have no opinion on that. I don't know. At the time, who knows?
Okay. Any further?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just also want to clarify that if there's anything of public record, the select board has the ability to consider anything in the public record as part of their deliberation, whether it was presented here or not. So if they wanted to look at another highway map, or if they wanted to look at another document that's of public record, that can be part of the deliberation.
Historical records can be part of it.
Exactly.
Thank you. Good clarification. All right, Madeline, thank you very, very much.
Thank
Appreciate your input as well. So let me now ask others who were sworn at the beginning, if any of you folks would like to provide additional testimony and input tonight. Yes, come on up. Steve, please identify yourself, tell us where you live, and
Hi there, I'm William Butler. I live on Mullen Road in Underhill. It's our family farm we're talking about. So times change. Neighbors used to use it. It used to be a passable road. Brad's brought up, it's very much eroded and has gone south quite badly. The Cambridge end, Howard requested the town of Cambridge put boulders in because used to get a lot of traffic from trucks and ATVs. They would come up and go mud bogging in the wetland sections back and forth. There was a lot of littering of beer cans over the years. After the boulders were put in, that seemed to really slow that right down to about nothing. As Nally mentioned, you know, there's occasional traffic of biking and hiking and skiing, fishing, you name it. But one big point I want to point out is that recently the town has ceased maintaining class 4 roads. And that has put a big burden on the landowners that live on class 4 roads. And so we plow it. I plow Butler Road myself. The neighbors share the cost of plowing whenever Frenches make it there before me. We pay for the gravel. In the last year, the neighbors and I put in over $6,000 of stone and ditching and grading to the road. So my big worry is if this is opened up, the town's, it's gonna come back on us to maintain it like we are right now, because the town already is not maintaining the infrastructure that's there. And that would be a big cost added on to us. Yeah, those are some of my big points. As Nally said, theft over the years, you know, it's slowed down a lot, but we've had a lot of stuff stolen out of the sugar house. And we have a business there. We've got the parking lot we've built for the sugar house. If it was opened up, people would be using our parking lot. We'd have to be paying to maintain that. The road does jig and jag, so it is very hard to tell where it is. As mentioned, yes, we are tapping the trees there. That's about all I can think of. But the big thing is the money that'll come back on us to have to pay towards maintaining this if it was to be open. And it's gotten to where it's a peaceful, quiet spot, and we really want to keep it that way. And you know, that's our opinion. But the cash part is the big one for us. And you know, we respect some of the neighbors don't want us four-wheeling and hunting on their property, so we try to respect that. And in turn, a lot of them have stopped using our property out of respect to us. So I just want to make the main point of the cash cost of maintaining that would probably come back onto me, my brother, and my father. I think that's it.
thank you very much. No, come on, sit tight. Let's see, any questions for Mr. Butler from the select board?
Well, thank you, Bill. That was a new insight.
Very useful. Anything from Peter or Bob? We're not hearing either one of you. Go ahead, Peter, you got your hand up. We're still not hearing you.
Yep.
Still
So,
not-
so if there was more compensation, it sounds like that would improve the situation for you quite a bit. How many residents are on the traveled portion of the road there?
3. Narrows, Corbins, and Bourgeois.
3, is that like 3?
And if the town plowed that, Would that be a big help for you, or?
Would it be a big help? I mean, but yeah, so the plowed part isn't even the part that's being discontinued. I'm just worried about if the rest of the road was opened up, it would come back on me and my family and the landowners to maintain it.
It's my understanding that when Irish Settlement Road was reconstructed last year, that there was quite a bit of material transferred to Butler Lane. Do you know approximately how much there was that was brought to Butler Lane?
This is not a moot point for the warned item, which is for the discontinuance or not of a portion of Town Highway 11. And that portion was delineated in the warning. I think that,
Yeah,
tell me if I'm wrong.
Dan, we just had a witness give us some testimony. I'm asking about the testimony that the witness gave.
I don't know how much fill was brought off of Irish Settlement Road onto Butler Road. None of it was put onto the section that we would like to discontinue. It was all further up. And it was already in the contract by the town, paid to Tatros for the fill to be removed. So they could have towed it way down the road or anywhere. I personally put the fabric down, and I hired a bulldozer operator to level it out, and the neighbors, we all split the cost of the bulldozer. So there was no expense to the town at all to move that fill onto Butler Road. It actually saved the contractor money because the excavator was within sight of the dump truck most of the time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Butler? Super, thank you very much, appreciate you.
I have a quick question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to tell William, I think that he did one heck of a job building up that road. It is quite an improvement from what was there before, so my hat goes off to him.
Thank you.
Super, thanks for that comment. Okay, who would like to speak next? Come on up. Watch the tripping, guys. Thank you. And you see, if you're right.
Hi, I'm Tristan Butler, Irish Settlement Road, Underhill. I work the farm probably too much daily with my brother. We're there all the time, all year. This road, as everyone saw last night as we walked, is not identified other than the two bridge abutments. Even Brad, who's done extensive research on this road, could not tell us on the walk, yes, the road is right there. No, the road is right here, where the road actually is. So the problem we have is the liability issue of people traveling on that nice trail network of the neighbors, coming onto our land saying, that looks like a nice connector route to Irish settlement. So for us, this is a liability issue for them trespassing on our property because they naively don't know where the road is. They just see a convenient trail that we've been maintaining for our work purposes where they could get hurt. As we saw last night, many people tried to cross the brook because the bridges are gone and have fallen or got wet, putting liability on us as the landowners. So without properly surveying, marking, and indicating where the road is or trail, which would cost a lot of money to the town, there's no way to identify where this road is. And then to get into infrastructure to put in the trail or a road that could be traveled by everybody to enjoy is just adding more tax costs to everyone on the town. So this is Our point is the liability from 1933, this road was closed, pretty much discontinued because the bridges went out. So we're coming up on 100 years of this road being used on our property to ski, bike, walk, not on the actual road. So it's a very valid point to bring up discontinuance of it. Walking it, seeing it, falling in the brook, you will see you're not on the road, and you couldn't tell me you are on the road.
Super. Thank you. Questions from the select board? Yeah, I see your hand up. Okay, I think you just came on audio. Well, still aren't hearing you quite.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead, we got you.
So if the liability issue was resolved, would that make you feel more comfortable about people being on the road?
No, because you would have to survey, maintain, mark, and re-establish a road for people to follow versus casually walking onto ours. And as you can see on the maps that Brad presented, even people making professional maps right now make it appear the road goes up into our sugar woods, not where the original road was. So the town should not have to incur the costs of the liability of us and people going on our property for a road that really doesn't exist there now. It is wetland, riverbed, trees. It's just imposing a lot of cost on the town for an unnecessary route to nowhere.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the select board?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Appreciate you coming. Who else would like to provide testimony? Yes. Come on up. You arrived late, so come on up. I'm going to have to swear you in. You could have a seat, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the information you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you very much. Please identify yourself, tell us where you live, and go ahead.
I'm Donna Perrin, and our land, is surrounded by Butler land. We're adjacent to them. I've been here for 46 years. We built a home here 46 years ago. I have a question for Brad about discontinuance in Vermont. How many towns have requested discontinuance? Do you have that number?
Discontinuance has happened, I would safely say, in every single town in the state of Vermont.
And how many of them are granted?
That's a good question. That's a fair question. If we look back in '95, there were 3, I believe, roads considered for discontinuance. Maybe even 3.5 or a portion of another one. Those were all discontinued, with the exception of the Town Highway 11 due to the town line issue.
Okay.
But
so there's very little contesting of this, usually.
there's very little.
Very little contesting of the discontinuance.
Of a discontinuance hearing, I would say, yeah, that's a very good question. I don't really necessarily have a solid answer for it, but I would say more times than not, probably in most every case, a town highway considered for discontinuance is discontinued.
Okay.
But that's a good question.
Okay, and the other point I wanted to make is, I was on the school board years and years ago here in Underhill, and every time we wanted to make a change or an addition to the school, we had to have the taxpayers vote on it. I'm wondering, would that be a valid question if the discontinuance were denied, and if there were a group who wanted to have a trail put through. Since it's going to be a great expense to taxpayers, shouldn't it go up to vote?
You're asking the discontinuance should go up to vote?
No, if it failed, I mean,
If it
looking
was
into,
not discontinued.
yeah,
If it was not discontinued, it would remain a class 4 highway
and if there was a
until
plan,
someone decided to take a different action.
if there were a plan to turn it into a trail,
That would be a
And that-
reclassification. So that would
Okay.
be different from a discontinuance, right? So it'd be a different process.
would it be voted on?
What's that?
Would it be voted on?
It has been in the past.
And if the expense were to the town people, which it will be, would that be voted upon?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah. I can't answer that, but
It would depend on what would be proposed,
Mhm.
but that really isn't germane to our process of discontinuing or not.
Well,
You know,
when you
again,
think
it should
about
go back to reading that statement again. I think it's good to reiterate that
Yeah,
statement.
because we could go
It's valid.
down a lot of rabbit holes about what could happen, what couldn't, and
It's just a question I had that I wanted to have in people's minds. There are some consequences that may not be foreseen now.
Well, I
Believe me,
think,
I've experienced
it's my understanding that the budget is voted on and approved by the voters of the town of Underhill during the town meeting day. So either directly or indirectly, if action was to be taken, it would be approved by the residents of the town of Underhill.
Yeah, the purpose of tonight, just for me to clarify again, the purpose of this hearing tonight is solely focused on should the town discontinue or should the town continue, not what else should the town do, how much money would the town be willing to spend under what circumstances. It's pretty much on or off question. And where the purpose again is for the select board to receive testimony from a person who wishes to comment on please continue or please discontinue.
Gotcha, but I think it's important to think about consequences. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hang on, let's make sure there could be questions. Any follow-up questions from the select board? I think you said thank you very much. Be careful over that wire there, thanks too. Okay, did you wish to speak out? Come on up. Watch out for the trip hazard.
I'm Bart Johnston. I live on Dune Road. And I had a number of things I was going to say, but Brad's excellent presentation took out most of it. I would add one thing, though. This road has been inoperative for well over 100 years. And the earliest USGS map that I could find was 1921, and there was no road at all on that one. And then it did appear as a trail later on, but it wasn't in use. I think 1929 they showed that the road was actually broken in Cambridge, so it wasn't even through a road in Cambridge. Another important point I think is you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're going to stay in business, you have to have total control of your land, and I can speak from a firsthand knowledge of that. My grandparents had a farm, and it was a constant battle. And fences being cut, and dogs running the sheep, and people shooting holes in the barn, and it was never ending. And so, if you have an attractive nuisance like this trail, it will attract people, and they are going to do things. So. We need to keep every farmer in business. A few years ago, we were down to 1,000 dairy farms in Vermont, And today, I think we're at 650. I mean, they've just been going out of business one right after the other. So we have to do everything we can to keep our farmers in business. The last thing that I would like to say is if the town ever decided to improve this class 4 road or anything at all, then you'd have to deal with the environmental people at the state level. I worked for the Agency of Transportation for over 20 years, and I worked with our environmental people all the time, every project. And so, and they came from A&R, and they came from Forests and Parks, they came from all over. So I know how environmental people at state level think, and they would have a ball. It would probably be A&R. It wouldn't be the Agency of Transportation because it's a town highway. So they wouldn't get involved, but A&R would. And first off, they want to know, well, why do you want to do this? And you'd have to convince them of that. And then you'd get into the real environmental nitty gritty. And there would be lawyers, and there would be hearings, and there would be engineers, and then they'd take a look at everything that you provided, and then they'd say, well, we don't have enough information yet, so let's go back and we want some more. And I mean, and so now you've got a project that you're trying to do in a year, and it's out to 3 years, maybe 5 years. And so it would cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And quite frankly, it wouldn't be worth it. And as Natalie said, you know, anybody that asks permission, you know, it gets granted. And I know I asked for permission. So I think that that's all I have to say, but I hope that the decision is made to let this land revert back to the Butler.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the select board?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
It sounds like you've had a lot of experience with right-of-way. I think you might have mentioned that at some other point. So one of the alternatives is adjustment of alignment. And it seems to me that a lot of the discussion tonight has been about how an exact location of the road is very important. And I'm wondering really how important is that? Is if there's a nice old tree in the way of a sidewalk, you don't cut the tree down to put the sidewalk through, you run the sidewalk around the tree. And I'm wondering about times that you've seen right-of-way adjusted here in, the land of meets and bounds. Seems to me that there's a lot of negotiation about the location of things. Can you talk a little bit about that, Bart?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, first you have to establish where the easement is. So then you've got your surveyors that go in and do it, and the town would have to hire them. And then the A&R people would come out and take a look at it. And if they saw something that they didn't like where the easement is, then you would have to mitigate. And which means maybe buying more easement, or I don't know. I think that is really a challenging area. And of course, stormwater runoff is a big issue now. So, you could end up building in ponds and all kinds of things. So. Did I answer your question?
Well, not quite, but that's okay. Your experience has been with highways mostly, I gather.
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No?
I do not have anything else. Thank you for your.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Mr. Edson, come on up.
My name's David Edson. I live out on the Pleasant Valley Road, off on Chad's Road, actually. I've been around town for a long time, in '68. I'm on the planning commission. I don't see any problems as far as the town plan goes with discontinuing this road. And I'm in favor of discontinuing it for all the reasons that have been stated by Bart and the Butler family. That's all I have to say. Very simple.
Thank you very, very much.
No problem.
I doubt there's any questions. I think that was very clear and succinct, you know, that was good. That was great. Let me take a break in the action here now, and let's go to the virtual folk. Anybody who's joined us virtually, if you wish to speak, yes, raise your hand, please identify yourself. Say it.
I'm Lauren McKnight. I live at 164 Beartown Road. I just have a few things to say as a private citizen in the town of Underhill and a resident here. I walked the road last night, what was left of the road, and a couple of things really stuck. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we're hearing you well. That's good.
Okay, so a couple of things really came to light with me. And one is the number of times it seemed like, from the evidence, the number of times Settlement Brook changed its course, sort of back and forth at times. And I was thinking to myself, if this became a class 4 road or a trail, or people wanted to try to make it a trail, it's number one, it's going to be sort of a throw of the dice on which way the Settlement Brook is going to continue when it floods again. So that was part of the thing I was thinking about. The other thing that I did notice, and this is after the bridge abutment to the north, or right in that vicinity, if you look across Settlement Brook, there's a steep hill there, and it has started to erode, so much so that a couple boulders have fallen down into the brook. And with that in mind, if it has additional erosion, I would think that that would cause the brook to change a lot. Today, I looked at the ANWR maps and also noted that that area is wet. It is sort of a continuous area for wildlife to go back and forth. And finally, if that area is wet, a lot of it is hydric soil. That again would mean that a significant wetland, which I think the gentleman before me was pointing out. And I hear, well, people don't know what they don't know, and what if in 50 years from now we need that road for something? I understand that, but I think basically the cost to the environment to put in a road, the cost to rebuild a road for the town of Underhill, the type of soil, all of that indicates to me as a resident of Underhill that the town would be better served just leaving it as is, and not make it a road, basically, or a class 4 road. I know this is the hearing tonight is to either decide to discontinue the road or not, and if the choice is continue it and have to fix it up versus discontinue it, I guess I would have to say I would favor discontinuing it.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Peter, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Could you just let Brad know about that spot where you saw the boulders. It wasn't clear where you saw that, and I don't recall seeing any boulders. But if you could just communicate with Brad and have him located on the map, I'd really appreciate that.
I know.
And I guess I want to make another comment. Generally, people have been referring to maps and documents, and I just want to make sure Brad gets a copy of all of that so that it's in the record for the select board. Thanks.
And Brad, I'm not sure you heard Peter, Brad said he knew where the boulders are there, so he's got other questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. This is Pat Weisel. It's listed under Mike, but.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, state your name again and then go ahead.
Pat Weisel. I live across the road. I'm sorry, I just can't let this go, Natalie, but you made a comment that the existing trails that the bike club have experienced excessive damage and vandalism and trash and all kinds of stuff like that. And that is absolutely not the case. Nobody has ever found so much as a beer can on any of the close to 30 miles of private bike trails on private property. So that can't really be a valid excuse for whatever, but please, if you're going to make statements, make sure that they're correct, and not make it sound like there's a reason that doesn't exist. And to kind of assuage Tristan's worries, as I understand it, and I think Brad probably can verify this, the state does have some sort of landowner liability if somebody is recreating or on somebody's property and gets hurt. The landowner is not responsible unless they've actively put something out there, like putting a wire across a snowmobile trail or something. Is that correct, Brad?
That's the best of my knowledge. That's the precedent that's been set in the state of Vermont.
All right, and as I said in my statement, I'm not in favor of making this a road. I don't think anybody is, but I don't see why it can't just stay the way it is. Nothing's going to happen, and it's going to be there. They're going to continue to do what they're doing, and everything would be the same. So I guess I reiterate that I'm not in favor of throwing it up, but I'm certainly not in favor of turning it into a road or putting money into it or anything like that. So anyway, thank you.
Hey, hang on just a minute. Let me see if the select board has any questions for her.
I do not.
No. Peter, Bob, anything?
I'm sorry, Pat's relationship to the Brewster River Bike Club is what?
My husband's on the board and we have trails on our property.
So is it your testimony tonight that the Brewster River Club has received written permission from all the landowners that they have trails on?
Absolutely. I don't know if
That's amazing.
I just wanted to reiterate that there has been no visible damage or littering or vandalism on any of the trails that anybody's aware of.
Yeah, we'll get you up. Come on up. Okay. Good. Say your name again.
William Butler again, and I've personally picked up trash, and I know that personally a Brewster River Bike Club member has cut our barbed wire. And I have heard multiple stories of people. I'm not pointing fingers, but I would like to make that heard. I'm not going after the bike club. I have a lot of really good friends that are on the bike club, but I have personally heard stories of vandalism, and it takes one bad apple. And we deal with it with hunting. I'm a big hunter, and every year we deal with that with hunting. As I said before, the four-wheeling, we have four-wheelers. People are four-wheeling on our property, routing up the roads, and Howards would not like people on their property with four-wheelers, and I tell all my buddies, do not go on their property. But I know that's a fact that a Brewster River Bike Club member has cut our barbed wire. And our tubing. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who would like to provide testimony?
I just want to ask William a question about that last little bit.
Go ahead, he's listening and we'll get him back up to the mic.
Can you just identify the locations of those vandalisms or the trash? Was that on the road itself or
The vandalism
somewhere else?
Vandalism was along the Irish Settlement River and along the Howard property line. There are no trails right directly related to that. I mean, they're about 100 yards from there, but the trails have crossed onto our property, and you know, that's been sorted out back and forth with neighbors. Any other questions?
So it's not on this road that you've had this issue.
What was that?
It's not on this road that you've had that issue. Was not
on this road.
On Town.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
William, aware of any other landowners in the area that have had problems with any of those recreational clubs aside from himself?
Come back up. You're just jumping up too soon. You need more exercise.
Yeah, let me just exercise some more. Yes, tubing gets moved quite often. Trees have been cut on other landowners. This is not on my personal property. But I'm not, these are things that I know are factual. I'm not going to repeat things that are hearsay because I don't want to get in the middle of that. I'm just stating back to Pat's statement, some facts that I am.
Thank you.
Did you want to provide additional testimony? Come on up. Come on up. Gotta get close to the microphone so we can.
Tristan Butler and Irish Settlement again. John Butler is watching, but tech savvy, he can't mic in. He just wanted to make clear that you are trespassing the whole length of the road. 90% of our walk last night was trespassing on his property to view the road. And for anyone to try and use the road, you have to trespass on his to even attempt to establish a trail because you don't know where the road is. And he's just saying you're on his property the whole time without the town taking a step. If we continue this road, the town would have to make a step to clarify where this road is, or you're trespassing on his, which none of us want to trespass on anyone else's land. You know, so that was John Butler's comment. And
thank you for relaying. Okay.
So I have questions.
Hang on, we may have a question. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm interested in the history of the posting of the land there. It looked to me like the top layer of the posted signs had two dates on them. One was in 2020, and then the previous one was something like 2012. And I'm just wondering how many years have those signs been up? Looked like there might have been, you know, a layer or two underneath going back some years. Do you know how long the land's been posted?
I do not know how long the land has been posted. As long as I can remember, we've maintained posting it, but it's to reiterate again, those signs you saw were posting the whole farm because these trail networks are surrounding our farm within feet of our property line. Where people see a convenience road that we use in the Sugar Woods, they're not meaning to cause harm. They're out having fun recreating, but they follow this random road because they know it connects to somewhere else and they're just out. But we post it for that reason because we want our privacy. Liability or not, like Pat was saying, maybe there are things protecting us, but we have the right to privacy. End of story. You're on our property, not the town road, without it being marked.
Fair to say it's been posted the past 5-7 years. Anyway.
Yeah, at least 20, yeah.
Thank you.
I missed
I have a
that.
question.
How many years?
He thought for probably the past 20.
How old is Tristan?
Thank you.
Say again, Bob.
How old is Tristan?
I'm 30.
So I can tell you that that land's been posted for at least 40, because I can remember the gate being posted right before the sugar house, where there was a metal gate across the road and there were orange signs posted. So either your grandfather or your father had posted signs all around that farm, and I can remember them distinctly. So that's nothing new. That land has been posted for as long as I can remember.
He has spoken about posting it because they've sugared in that sugar house for generations, and they've had all the windows shot out of it from people using the road. People used to do their beer run, drive down that road on his land and steal stuff. But he's posted it because the road had been there. It appears to be a road that's going on to his property is what we're reiterating, and had fun, I guess, in their idea, but caused a lot of damage to his, property.
So Bob, for the record, how old are you?
I'm 18 or 19 years older than Tristan.
Yeah, all right. So
And I was a little disappointed that I didn't get a birthday card from you, Dan, but I'm hoping that, by next year, you'll be able to make that up to me.
there we go. You'll start getting the AARP stuff soon enough.
That's right.
Any other persons wishing to give testimony today? Anybody else on? Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. Come on up.
My name is Ben Butler, at 71 Maple Ridge again. I just am in favor of the discontinuance, and I think the petition spoke highly of what the town agrees with that.
Thank you.
Questions, I'm assuming?
Let me return to virtual attendees. Is there anyone else out there joining us virtually who has any remarks to offer? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to return this back to Mr. Steinbauer.
Just to remind people, the process, the select board will deliberate, and we have a specific time period in order to do that, and we will deliver a report in a public fashion. And we will stay within the prime time frame that we are allocated
I think it
to
would
get this job done.
It would be appropriate to, Peter, let me just state what I'd like to say first, and then you can go ahead. But I would say at the conclusion of this, I think it would be appropriate to move to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and then move to deliberation until a decision is reached. But go ahead, Peter.
My question is about the evidence. This is the first time we've seen the material that was shown today, and I feel like we should review it and see if there's any more information we need to find. There's one thing in particular that I'd like to investigate more, and that's this heat map. The global heat map from Strava is easy to get to, but there's a whole nother transportation planning service that they provide to towns, and I was interested in getting Andrew to bring that service online for Underhill, and I think we might want to investigate that before we make any more decisions about this area, because just looking at the global heat map, looks like there's a lot of biking going on there, or at least a lot of running. And
I think the
I think that would be
911,
valuable information.
the 911 map is about as good a trail source as there comes, or as it gets. But I'll just remind you again, anything of public record that you want to explore in your deliberation is okay. But if you're asking for something that's not of public record, or testimony that we can't get after we close or if you choose to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, that's when you'd want to continue the hearing.
I'd like to be recognized.
Anything of public record.
I'm not sure it's a public record. That's why I'm mentioning it now. And this is a license. It's a free license, but it's a license that's for municipalities only.
Bob?
I'd like to be recognized. I'd like to move that we close the evidentiary portion of the hearing.
I will second that motion. Is there discussion?
Based upon the testimony that we just heard from the town administrator, it is my belief that evidence that the select board could find independently from that which was presented tonight would be able to be utilized for purposes of rendering a decision. Is that correct?
That is also my understanding, Bob.
I'm ready for the question.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
We need to do a roll call. Dan Steinbauer, aye.
Bob Stone, aye.
Peter Duval, no. I think
The motion has passed 2-1.
I think we may find ourselves deliberating and then needing to go back into an evidentiary session once we get going.
Can we hold that thought for just a minute? Is that okay? While I just checked on something, please.
Yes.
Is it your understanding that the documentation that was presented tonight would be provided to the individual members of the board for review? And once that is done, then we could begin to have a discussion as far as when we would begin to have a deliberation, whether that is in public or in private.
Bob, I don't understand the question.
My question is that tonight, Brad presented a quite thorough presentation, almost like a PowerPoint presentation with a lot of maps and data and information, as well as the testimony from several residents that I'm sure will be recorded by, a transcript will be provided by Donna. And I'm sure that will be done in the next several days. Once that has been provided, I'm assuming that that information then would be provided to members of the select board. We would then be able to re-review that information and then set up a time to deliberate. At that time, we would have to make a decision whether we are going to deliberate in public view or if we're going to do that in private view. And I'm just wondering if that is your understanding of how we are going to proceed at this point, seeing as how we are done with accepting evidence as it relates to this discontinuance hearing.
It is my impression, Bob, that we would deliberate in private. And deliberation, as a select board, or as a DRB for that matter, you don't need to warn the meeting. It is a deliberation. It is putting together the evidence. And I would, want to do that thoroughly based on likely the excellent minutes that we will have of this hearing and of the witness of the site visit. And we will be able to get the job done. And Brad is perhaps checking on what evidentiary material is available to us as we deliberate. But certainly anything that's mentioned here tonight as a possibility would be included in the areas that we can use to deliberate, including Peter's raising of additional maps, because it was raised in the hearing portion, the deliberative portion of this process.
Everything's okay. I was just checking on something, but your motion and the action you took is fine.
Okay. So a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
I will second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Dan Steinbauer, aye.
Bob Stone, aye.
Peter Duval, no.
The motion to adjourn the select board meeting, that is a hearing, has passed 2-1. We are adjourned.
I just put the link to this map in the chat window for anybody who's interested in it.